Hello, good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Lynn with Wild and Precious Optimal Living Show. And you have this one wild and precious life, right? And you have just this one brain, body, and heart that dictates the quality, direction of your life. So we have candid conversations here about all things healing that's related to brain, body, and emotional well-being. And today, this show is brought to you by NeuroSolution, and I'm also super excited because honestly, we've been doing our shows at 2:30 in the afternoons on Fridays, and now I get to shift up to 10 a.m. And I know for morning people, as you're commuting, as you're doing whatever you're doing at home, at work, I'm really grateful that you're tuning in to our show here. And I have a really special guest today. She is like a sister, a colleague, a roommate in chiropractic school, and we are going to be diving deep about CBD and the benefits and the magic behind it. So really helping you to demystify what is CBD, how does it work, why does it work, and why is it necessary for every household to actually use it, right? And so Dr. Carrie Dennison from Thrive Mode, I'm super excited to be able to have you on the show. We have such a long history together. And we went to chiropractic school, we were in the same class together, we were roommates, and it's so fun to be able to really just see you evolve, like both of us grow up into motherhood, into our own personal careers and our own personal expression. And for you, plant medicine has always been a fascination. I know that, and I remember that being in chiropractic school. So could you give us a little bit more about what you do in Steamboat in Colorado?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really appreciate just being able to have this conversation with you and just be here with you and talk about things related to what your vision is for wild and precious optimal living.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and with my partner and I, we have a chiropractic practice here that is like a family practice. We take care of everybody, and we really focus on chiropractic in our office. So we do adjustments and we give some exercises and things, but mostly we focus on the adjustment and how that allows people to adapt more readily and heal and function better and just be a better version of themselves than they were before adjustments. So that's a lot of what I do in Steamboat. I'm also a mom. I have two little ones that are 2 and 4, and they keep me super busy a lot, and I spend as much time with them as I can. So I'm part-time between the office and mom and working on some other things. So
Yeah.
that's what I do in Steamboat.
That's awesome. Well, I know that the first time you introduced me to CBD, or your line that's really new in the market as well too, is I remember you were visiting us and you had a couple bottles and you're just like, I want you to try this out. And I know that Sam, Dr. Sam in our office, he uses it regularly too in terms of actually recommending it for some of our practice members. And it's really interesting. I never actually got to dive deep into CBD or really truly understand the value of it or the benefits of it until you actually you were just like, try this. And Dr. Sam, honestly, he also had me, he's like, you should use CBD, or at home there's a few times when I just had a hard time relaxing, and I always felt like, no, I'm okay, I'll let my nervous system calm. And it wasn't until you actually were visiting and you were like, here's a couple bottles. I'm like, well, Carrie's bringing it to me. Of course I'm going to use it. It's a gift. So I was able to finally get a little bit more introduced to it. And, I really love to just be able to dig your brain, dig your mind about what you know today on that. And, how could you share with us just more of how you started using CBD and how you just kind of started to go down the rabbit hole with this world here?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned before that you always knew me as someone into plant medicine. And so I want to just back up and start a little bit right there because in 2011, right after I graduated my undergraduate, I had symptoms of Crohn's disease, and I actually healed through those symptoms using a lot of naturopathic type of healing, Chinese medicine, like a combination of things. But that's where I really got introduced to plant medicine in a way that was really close to home for me, that I experienced the benefits of it firsthand, just healing through it's an inflammatory bowel disease. So getting my inflammation down and neutralizing my body and getting more in tune with it, plants really helped me in that way. So different herbal teas and aloe drinks and, simple things that are plants that are here on the earth that helped me to heal in a very real way, in a very tangible way in my everyday life. So that's where I really started my relationship with understanding like what Mother Earth has to offer for us and how amazing it is in its most pure forms. And then fast forward to graduating chiropractic school, having my first baby, and then actually having my second baby. And I have some friends here in town. We met playing basketball, and they are my producers. So they produce the hemp. They grow it here in Steamboat. They also have a couple of other grows in Tennessee and another one in Colorado. But everything happens here in Steamboat. So those producers from other states, Tennessee, send them here, and they do everything here in Steamboat, which I didn't actually know this was going on. And I was like hitting them up for some soil for my house plants, like, hey guys, some soil. Like, oh, Carrie, okay. And they also gave me a sample of their most recent CBD oil that they've been working on, and just kind of offered it to me and didn't really say much. And we get samples all the time. I think there's probably at least 20 companies just in Steamboat, and this is a small mountain town. And there's many that I don't even know about, so maybe there's more than that. But we've had a lot of those companies come in and give us samples and ask us to consider selling it. And the first couple of years, it was just something we weren't interested in, and we didn't know enough about it. And and we did try their samples. So I had tried some other CBDs before, and never really noticed anything major. And to be fair, I never did it as consistently. So I would try some of it, and then not. When they gave me the oil, I actually just tried it, and I tried it every day for a period of time, and like probably about a month, I used their oil every day. The sample they gave me was like a good size, and it was potent, so I didn't have to use a lot of it. And I looked back after I finished the bottle, because I like the day that I was kind of emptying it, I'm like, wow, I actually used all of it, and I did it consistently. That's different. I haven't really done that. And it wasn't until that moment when I kind of looked back at the previous, I don't know, 3 weeks or 30 days or so, like, wow, I'm actually different in the way that I'm being right now as a result of using that every day. I didn't change anything else. I didn't like take away or add any other things that I could connect it to, except for trying the CBD every day. And it came right at a time, like in the beginning of 2020, when I had that realization, and just seeing the amount of stress that the world was coming under at that time. I really felt a calling, like that innate voice coming in saying, like, you need to share this with people.
Yeah.
And that's when the idea of Thrival Nectar came up, and I talked to my friends, and we kind of got the ball rolling and started to create something that was a little more personal from me, not like this exact same as their sample, but something else that came about, and we created Thrival Nectar from there.
So beautiful. And I can't wait to dig into some of the ingredients that you have in your CBD. And just hearing your story brings up a few different things to mind. And first of all, it's, we know that CBD is so readily available, like everywhere. Like you're saying, everybody's just dropping off CBD samples left and right. And I definitely want to dig into, like, are all CBD like created the same? But just even understanding, like, it seems like it's so readily available, it's so abundant, and yet, there's something from when we talk, even when we say the word plant medicine, that there's something really powerful behind that, the wisdom behind plants, the wisdom behind not just CBD, right? Not just hemp, not just you know any other type of herbal tinctures. It's really truly what's the array, what's the wisdom behind each plant. I think that there's some ancient practices and so many different cultures utilize plants in different ways for healing and even for sacred ritual ceremonies. And I don't know, for you, I know that that was something you were always drawn to too. Like you're a very, I would say you're a very soulful, spiritual person, and very, reflective. And I don't know, from your personal experience versus like mass consuming of CBD or availability of CBD, do you feel like that as a consumer, there should be some wisdom or like, what do you suggest in how we can better, like, truly embrace plant medicine, not necessarily just CBD, but just in general, because I feel like that's an important component too.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's been a lot of information recently, and it's not new evidence, but it's just being brought to light now, kind of the way things usually come about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, there's a book called Regenerate by Sayer G, and he talks about this in the book, but it's the concept that when we intake food, plant medicine, anything that's growing and coming from the earth, that it's actually information.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been posed a hypothesis that maybe we have it wrong about nutrition and we're looking at these macronutrients and micronutrients and uh, vitamins and minerals and all of these different parts of it. And in essence, that all of those parts are a piece of information that we consume, and then it gives that information to our body.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they're, they talk about how you don't necessarily have to eat 2 tablespoons of chia seeds to have the benefits of chia seeds. Like, if you have just some chia seeds in your water, you're getting the information from those chia seeds, all the good fatty acids and things that are coming in, and you don't necessarily have to eat tons of chia seeds to get that information, but the information is conveyed to your body through the water. So that's where I feel like, as a consumer, even when I read that and heard it and started to learn about it and started to apply it to my life, I just kind of dabbled around with what about just adding things to my water, because that felt like the easiest way to sense the information from the plants,
Mm-hmm.
in a gentle way, and just kind of see what I felt and what the differences were.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as a consumer, just considering that as an idea, you
Yeah.
know, I don't have to eat tons of spinach. Maybe you aren't sure about spinach, but what if you just take like a little piece of a spinach leaf and put it in your water bottle and like let the information from the spinach somehow come into your body?
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe the most like simple way and like kind of straightforward path to just like tuning in. And then I think it's each person's responsibility to just like do that, tune in.
Right.
And
Yeah, and I think that that's very true. And even when you were telling your story of how you met your producers, your farmers for CBD, and there is, I'm sure you've just witnessed the whole process of growing it at specific seasons, having the right temperature, having the right environment, and just the wisdom of Mother Nature being able to actually nourish and grow these plants in order to be able to then extract the purity and the essence of it. And when I think about oils, I immediately also think about essential oils, right? And so the extraction, what I always loved about essential oils is the idea that it's extracting this intelligence that's really rich in different parts of the plant itself and putting it into a bottle, and it's so potent when we receive these little bottles, right? And I think so's Thrival Nectar. It's a smaller bottle, and most CBD we see it, but you don't really need to take a lot to experience the magic behind it. And tuning into, when you talk about tuning inward, I think, even just in general when we're eating mindfully or eating food, it feels like we need to. This is an opportunity to slow down and just embrace the fact that there's so much that went into what came to be from from those plants and everything. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So when you say tuning in, that just kind of made me think about that aspect. So with your your CBD, I think for our first listeners, I know that it's so we actually just the other day, I was walking through the grocery store and just cans of CBD water or, is readily available. And, but what is CBD? We know that it's just a relaxing chemical, but what does it stand for? And let's dig into some of the physical components of CBD and talk more about how that, and we'll start to unfold from there.
Okay. Yeah, so CBD is the chemical name, essentially. It's the initials. The initials for the chemical name. So it's cannabidiol. And when I was writing about this, I was just like, learning about it, it gets kind of like, whoa, because it's a cannabinoid. So our body recepts with different receptors. We actually have an entire system in our body called the endocannabinoid system, or the endogenous within us cannabinoid system. So cannabinoids are like neurotransmitters, and those chemical messages that go around in our brain and our body, helping it regulate and tell it what to do. So similar to the nervous system, which helps regulate everything and communicate from the brain to the body and the body to the brain, the endocannabinoid system is also, I'd say it's like so closely woven in with the nervous system because they're sharing neurotransmitters. And I think there's still a lot of research and evidence to get into here that they need to keep studying, but it's been known for a long time, and it's not in medical textbooks. So it's really interesting history behind it, because at the time that hemp was basically banned because there was a lack of understanding, or I think there's more political reasons behind it. Personally, that's my opinion. But from the time it was banned, it's also kind of like, well, we're gonna pretend like this endocannabinoid system doesn't exist either, and it'll be fine.
But we just kind of write it out.
Yeah, we just like write it out, and it's insane. And there are people, doctors, scientists dedicated to making sure that people know about this system and know about the benefits of this plant medicine. So we're getting back to a place where we can have access to information that teaches us about this system and how it interplays in our lives. So the cannabinoids, we actually produce some in our body. There's like a couple that we naturally produce, and one of them is produced in mother's breast milk. So that's like one obvious one that is already there for the baby as they are born to be nurtured with their mother's milk. They're already getting these cannabinoids and filling up those receptors. So it's not anything new to our body to introduce it in a form of hemp. The form of hemp just looks similar to the one that our body's already producing, and they fit inside the same receptors. So it's a chemical compound, the CBD, cannabidiol, and that is a cannabinoid. And there are many, many cannabinoids. There's at least over 100 that they've discovered. And so like another well-known cannabinoid is THC. And that kind of brings that into the conversation. We well know THC from the 60s and like its psychoactive effects, and it's part of what kind of gives marijuana and even hemp like a negative connotation, because I think of one, the political aspects, and then the misunderstanding of how can that medicine help our bodies. But THC actually activates CBD. So in CBD compounds that are full spectrum, or they say whole plant, then those ones are typically more active because of the THC content, which is below 0.3%. So in CBD usually is from hemp. Like when you see CBD products marketed on the shelf, those are usually from hemp. In most places, unless you're in a state where adult use of marijuana is legal and you go into like a dispensary and they have CBD products, those could be from marijuana. So it's important to know the difference as a consumer, like where you're buying it from and what the source is from. And I honestly think the best thing to do is go to the website and actually look up the company and find out where their CBD is coming from, whether it's a hemp source or whether it's a marijuana source.
Awesome. I want to be able to I want us to be able to dive deeper into, because I know there's like different places that you can actually shop for CBD, and not all CBD is created equal, is what I'm hearing from you too. And I've definitely read about that, and just wanting to dive deeper into that. I think too is just this curiosity. So CBD is just this more of a compound, like THC. The way I understand it from you is like two different really powerful and healing compounds that interacts with the receptors in our body, right? And so these are there's and CBD obviously doesn't exist in just hemp. You were just saying that it's in marijuana. So under the umbrella, is there like a parent umbrella of plants that weed and hemp fall under? And what makes, I think one of the myths is, I think weed obviously or marijuana, it's more of a psychoactive. It does change our cognition in a way too. So I wanted to kind of ask you, what's that major umbrella of plant that's there, and what's the difference between truly like CBD from marijuana and CBD from hemp?
So are you talking about cannabis? Like,
yeah,
cannabis is the plant family as a whole.
Okay, so that sativa is one. There's like different ones. Is it sativa?
Yeah, and there's sativa. So in marijuana, there's sativa and indica.
Okay.
And so far in my research and what I understand, in hemp there's only sativa.
Okay.
So there's a difference there in that there's not as many, like not the same types. When you separate down, making a little triangle, like cannabis is here, and then we have hemp and marijuana, and hemp has sativa only, as far as I know, and marijuana has sativa and indica, which have their own properties. And so when you're talking about marijuana from the cannabis family, it generally has much higher contents of THC. So it's like anywhere from 10 to like, I don't know how high the percentage actually goes, but it usually starts around 10. And with hemp, by law, to call it hemp, it has to be less than 0.3% THC. So from 10% to 0.3% is a huge gap. You're getting like just a small amount of that. And with hemp products, that is generally not enough to consider it as being psychoactive.
Yeah.
So at some point, hemp was removed from the Schedule 1 class of drugs by the FDA and kind of sectioned differently because it has such a low content of THC that it's not expected to be addictive. So therefore, they changed its classification.
Awesome. Okay. So then you also mentioned that THC is necessary to actually activate CBD. And so I'm also very curious because there's different versions, right? There's broad spectrum or isolate spectrum variation, and which is just CBD itself, and then there's a combination of THC. So does it mean that the THC one, just a small percentage, like the 0.3%, does that make it a better CBD compared to perhaps an isolate or a broad spectrum?
In my opinion, it does, because that's the closest offering from as nature intended from the plant. And so then we go back to talking about the information as from the plant medicine, instead of just taking the parts of it and trying to utilize the parts. They actually tried to make a synthetic THC, and it didn't work because it was missing the rest of the components that are in all the rest of the cannabinoids that are helping this, like, a synergistic effect take place. So the CBD isolate is actually isolating only the molecules of CBD and only having pure cannabidiol into something without any other cannabinoids, because they've already discovered like there's at least 10 that have no names. There's CBG, CBN, CBDN, and
Oh,
it
wow.
goes on and on. But
Yeah.
those are there's like a handful of ones that are more popular and measured in third-party testing, and you can kind of get a full picture of what's in your CBD, and that's a whole other topic. But
Yeah.
um, the isolate only contains CBD.
Mm-hmm.
The full spectrum contains THC and all of those other things I just mentioned, along with the CBD. Broad spectrum is kind of like a middle point, because broad spectrum is designed to keep most of the cannabinoids while removing THC. So it's trying to keep more of the information from the plant, but taking out THC for, if people have to have regular drug testing, or
Gotcha.
maybe just have a philosophical reason why they don't want to use THC, then I think that's my second best recommendation, is to go with broad spectrum, because it's removing the THC, but also keeping all of the cannabinoids in there for the synergistic effect for how they work.
Awesome. Okay. And so I'm just trying to understand too then, if so it sounds like hemp medicine or hemp plant offers a lot of benefits, and so does marijuana. And if a person, is there any major distinctions, because there's a lot of medicinal now marijuana available for people, and well, different doses for pain management and for depression or anxiety, these different aspects, mental wellness as well too. So just curious, is there different or is there different intentions behind marijuana versus hemp plant? Because I feel like obviously if I don't want these psychoactive components, that's going to be my main reason for not using marijuana and choosing CBD with hemp instead. But do you know what the power is between the two, or the difference, or is there any, whether you use marijuana or CBD from marijuana or CBD from hemp, what is the difference between those?
That's a great question. So one thing I think is important to talk about there is like the differences in growing practice, because it's harder to find organically grown marijuana. And so when you're sourcing marijuana, it's important, and hemp and CBD, it's important to find a producer that has organic hemp or organic marijuana. And I think that's where like it becomes the knowledge of the consumer. Like we have to be educated as a consumer when we go in to purchase something. Otherwise, you could be getting tons of heavy metals and pesticides and just all of these chemicals that have leached in to the plants, and then now you're consuming into your body. So that's one area with marijuana that I think it's not really regulated. So it's not in hemp either, to be fair. There are growers and producers that are more aware and conscious of it, and then take the extra steps themselves to make a cleaner product. So that's one thing to really consider when you're choosing between the two. But then the big question too is the THC content, and like what you're getting as a result of taking the plant medicine. And that's where I think it's mostly personal preference, or like what's your purpose. Like it's always good to know, like before you start to take any plant medicine, like why, what is it, what are you hoping this does for you? And maybe it's maybe it's an extreme case, like you've just been diagnosed with cancer, or you've just been diagnosed with MS, and maybe you're in line with your philosophical choices to try marijuana. And there are certainly marijuana strains that have higher amounts of CBD. So then you can essentially marry that to and have a strong medicine in that way. And again, it's important to kind of know what products you're purchasing and making sure they're clean from all of those other toxins that could be having a counter effect on the medicinal purposes.
Yeah.
And then with hemp, obviously you're going to get the less psychoactive effect, and you're going to get more of the CBD medicine. And it's just different. I think it comes down to the person's choice and what they want to use the medicine for, and how they want it to help them, and doing their own research to come to something that is in line with them and what their goal is.
I think you bring up a really great point in terms of intention, right? And that's going to be true to any type of food source or any type of supplements that are so readily available. I mean, just walking through Sprouts or Vitamin Cottage, it's just like, here's your brand. Which bottle color do you like more? Like the label and all these different things that are readily accessible. And sometimes it's so packaged in it's packaged so nicely without actually seeing the physical component of the plant itself, or even truly considering like what are the true effects of it. We're always, I think, something that's reflective is looking for some fast acting results too. And when you talk about the intention behind whether you're using marijuana or hemp, it's like, what do you want? What's your intention that you're setting for yourself in using these things, knowing that there's a powerful effect from it? And I appreciate that reminder for the intention behind it. So very cool. And so it sounds like too, it just understanding that CBD isn't, obviously you've made it very clear that it's not created equal. There's a lot of different things to take into consideration when we're shopping for CBD. What are some components that we really should look for when we're looking at CBD?
Well, I may be kind of an extremist, but I always look for something that's organic. And when USDA organic seal isn't perfect, but it's something. It's some guideline, it's some oversight that is coming in and actually taking a look at what's in the final product and making sure that it's clean as it says it is, and that they're not using pesticides and heavy metals and toxins that are going to be coming in my body. So personally, I look for something that's certified organic as far as hemp and marijuana. I don't know if that exists in that world. I don't know as much in terms of like what the products are like, but for hemp, speaking specifically about CBD products, I would look for something that's certified organic, and then looking at the back of the label, like, do you recognize the ingredients, or are there some chemical structured names that you don't know? And chemical names are going to probably have numbers after them, where a normal plant name, it may be something you can't read or pronounce, but it's like, we're talking about cannabis sativa. It's like the Latin word for the plant. You'll maybe see Latin words for other plants that are in there, and that's different than a chemical name. So I would look for things that have more Latin names that are other plants, maybe homogenized in there with the oil, and not other chemicals. I think those are kind of the main things. Like, actually look at the product, and look at where they're sourcing their hemp from. So if things are USDA organic, usually they're going to be good, because hemp can be coming, or CBD can be coming from hemp that's grown commercially for like rope and seed and these other things, and then CBD is a byproduct, and they just want to make a little bit more money off the crop, so then they sell it as CBD. So that's not really intended for medicinal use, but technically it's CBD. So they still label it and market it and sell it as CBD to consumers. And that's where I think going with organic, you're always going to be at a safe bet to have something that is intended for medicinal use.
Okay. And then why are there certain other chemicals then? If it's extracted purely, why are there, it sounds like there's all these other, maybe synthetic products that may be in oils?
It could be a combination. So it could be like the way they extract the oil itself. So there are, they use like petrochemicals in some extractions. So they use like butane or propane to actually fractionate and extract the oils out. And if the person doing it, or the people or the lab, whatever, isn't paying close attention, some of that butane and propane can come off into the finalized product. And there's no regulation or oversight for that. So that's one way the chemicals can get in there. Another way is while the plant is growing, spraying fungicides and pesticides and herbicides on there to keep the plant alive and free of pests and all of that, those things are often made with heavy metals and tons of chemicals that like the plant absorbs into its leaves and its flowers, and then that's what's extracted out to become CBD, and it's part of the plant. So once they do the extraction, even if it's a cleaner extraction method, which I'll talk about in a second, they're still extracting the chemicals from there. So the other extraction method is using carbon dioxide, and that's similar to what you were talking about, essential oils. They're actually using the carbon dioxide, which is not really a chemical, and it gets all burned off in the process of extraction, but that's how they're getting the medicine or all of that information condensed down into this concentrated form. And that's what I would look for as well, is like, it's called CO2 supercritical extraction. And so that's where you can go to the website of the CBD that you're checking out and see what type of extraction method they use. And I think that's one of the more superior forms of extraction because it's not leaving behind anything.
Yeah. Wow. And so then I guess that would lead into some of the pricing discrepancies that we see out in the market in terms of the cost of CBD, because some CBDs are very high and it's more expensive. And is that why some of it sounds like the processing can be more complicated with?
Yeah, I think it's processing, availability of the hemp. If they're getting it from a source that they're getting it cheap because it's not actually intended for medicinal use, then that CBD is going to be cheaper. And it's also probably not going to work, and it may have actually poor effects in your body because it has all of these extra things in it that aren't meant to go in our bodies. And where other companies take the extra steps, they are organic, that costs money to get certified organic, and then it costs more to do smaller grows and have more intention behind the growing practices, and then use a different technology for extracting the oils. So yeah, all the working parts for creating the oil are going to have an effect on the outcome of the price. And it's something to consider, like a more expensive oil. And there are more expensive oils that are also not that great. Like if you look into their procedures of how they do things and how they're producing it, they might not actually be in line with the price. So it's, again, like the consumer's responsibility. It's our responsibility to know what we're buying and be educated on what we want and make sure we're getting that.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor to definitely take into consideration in terms of quality and purity of the oil itself. As we know, our environment is so laden with different toxins and stressors. So it's helpful to use CBD, obviously, it's also counterproductive to actually load toxins in your body at the same time.
Yeah.
So definitely. Well, I'd love to be able to dig into a little bit more in terms of variety of use for CBD, because I've seen it in coffee, I've seen it in water, I've seen it in so many different areas, and so I'd like to dig more into that shortly. I'd like to first give a shout out to our sponsor, Neural Solution. They are a phenomenal team who supplies practitioners and families with the use of the Avant laser. And they actually have a Neural Solution Facebook group that people who actually do have the lasers. It's a combination of practitioners and families on that Facebook group that I'm in, obviously, since we use the laser in our office. And I came across an amazing story that I felt so compelled to reach out to the mom. She's actually in Mexico, and she has triplets, and they were born 9 weeks early. And one of her sons is he's now 9 months old. He actually experienced an infection just 10 days after he was born that eventually just led to bleeding in the brain. And if you can imagine, when there's damage to the brain and there's bleeding in the brain, that leads to significant damage, and especially in such a vulnerable time during a baby's development when sensory input is so critical, motor skill development is so critical. This completely shifted the direction of his life, and so what eventually happened was he's not able to really move his legs. The doctor diagnosed him with cerebral palsy, so paralysis and unable to control his arms and legs. And the mom was just lost in a sense of not knowing what to do. And so she actually was able to connect with the doctor, Dr. Brandon Crawford, and his team, who specialized with who is one of the founders of NeuroSolution. And she actually posted this, and I just wanted to share the power of laser therapy. She said 1 month ago, he was not so relaxed in the floor. 1 month ago, he was not able to move his legs. He was 100% spastic. And 1 month ago, he was much more irritated. And just using the laser in combination with great practitioners and supporting this family, the baby, there's videos of the baby actually moving his legs. He's starting to hold himself up. This was a lady whose doctor told her that her son would never recover, would never be able to develop, would never be able to move his legs. And this is just amazing when you have a combination of the right tools, the right practitioners, the right knowledge and right support to guide you in that. And so I just wanted to be able to share that story from our sponsor, and just letting people know that this is available for practitioners, the laser itself, and it is available for family use. And it's powerful. I vouch for it 100%, and just how we use it in our office. And so just a great shout out to our sponsor. Now, I wanted to come back to you, Carrie. Thanks for being patient with me. So I just wanted to, dive deeper into the different various uses. Now, it's in a variety, like creams and lotions, and what is the best form? What is the best way to use CBD?
Again, I think it's like a personal choice. I think it depends on what you're intending it for. CBD is really great. I think one of the number one things it works on is inflammation. So it's really great for reducing inflammation. And depending where you are in your healing journey, that inflammation can be localized. And I think for most of us, it's more systemic because of how we eat, how we think, how we move or don't move. That inflammation is built up in our systems. And so personally, I like an internal oil. Oil is more bioavailable. The body can absorb it more and get it to the bloodstream more readily so that the medicine takes effect. So that's my personal go-to. And then again, I think it depends on what your preference is and what you're looking for. I know we have a lot of patients who want creams or topicals to like rub on joints or painful areas, and that is more specific. It's a more localized treatment for getting CBD or getting some of those other plant medicines like directly into the area where you want to reduce inflammation and reduce pain and fill up those receptors with the cannabinoids to aid your body in reaching homeostasis. So I think that's one of the main points that we haven't really talked about yet, is just getting the body to homeostasis, like getting the body to a balanced state. That's one of the main jobs of the hemp, or of the CBD, and of all the synergistic effect of the cannabinoids, is to help our bodies maintain a state of balance as we're going through all of these stressors in our lives. I don't know if I fully answered the question, but
no.
Other things.
Yeah, I think that does. You bring up a big point that we haven't really talked about, is really what is happening when CBD actually enters and it actually attaches to those receptors in our body, and what does balance mean when we're using CBD?
I think it just depends on the person, because as the CBD receptors get full, they're then communicating with other systems of the body, like the endocrine system and the immune system and the nervous system. And it's kind of like the plant. Like, we can't extract all these parts and expect to understand how it works, because it works together.
Right.
It's like once the CBD comes in, then it depends what the body needs. Like what my body needs is going to be totally different than yours. So from there, we can honor the intelligence of the body to do what it needs to do. And so a lot's happening.
Right. It's so, you bring up your response reminds me that there's so many things that we look for cause and effect. If you use this, you should do this, and you should do this. If you use this, then you're going to feel this way. And the reality is, just if we're taking the whole intelligence of the oil itself, especially in, like the pure form of it that you talked about earlier, I would imagine that it's like chiropractic too, right? It's everybody has a different response. There isn't really a clear line of you do this and you're going to see X results. And so that's a great reminder. And just so it's that reminder. I think what you're trying to say too is the body takes what it needs from the medicine itself.
Absolutely. So when I first started the idea of Thrival Nectar and like coming up with a product, and I was still like in the very ground stages, but I had the oil, and so I started giving it to people and then asking them in return could just please like do a pre-survey and a post-survey. And so I did a pre and post survey for everybody that I gave the bottles to, and the feedback was all across the board. Everyone's experience was totally different, and most of the people I gave it to weren't necessarily taking it for like anything specific, and they all had these things happening that they could pinpoint, like, wow, that was because I started using the CBD oil. And some of the things, one woman was having like extreme anxiety, and it's just like now after the first even week of using it, she was reporting to me like, oh my gosh, I feel like myself again. And that was like kind of reassuring on that innate voice that's telling me you have to share this with people. Because when she started telling me I feel like myself again, it was like, gosh, and I have chills right now talking about that. Like, that's huge when someone is so rung up by all the things going on that they don't even feel like themselves. And just to have a little bit of that plant medicine come in and the intelligence do with the intelligence of like her body to bring her back to a state of balance where she felt like herself, that is really profound. And I had other women, quite a few, tell me that it was extremely helpful for their menstrual cycles. And I think that was, maybe in the area of their personal imbalance, and then bringing in the medicine helped their body get the correct information to bring that aspect of their body's function to balance. I've had recovering IV drug users who are, that's a hard thing on a person's body.
Right.
They're really aging themselves at a rapid rate when they're doing that. And so they also suffer a lot of neurological symptoms after coming clean, and then their body's trying to regulate when it's been bombarded with chemicals in certain areas of the brain. And so I've had amazing responses from a couple people who are in recovery saying, wow, I'm not sweating profusely every single day anymore, because now their body's internal thermostat is able to come back to a state of balance. So just like all kinds of amazing things.
That's really awesome, and something that I think what all these draw to, like when we think about symptoms, oftentimes, obviously as chiropractors, we talk about the nervous system, and the symptoms really is a light on a dashboard, an indicator that the nervous system isn't regulating well. There isn't balance, right? There is perhaps more of poor regulation, poor efficiency, more perhaps even a person being in a sympathetic fight-flight state. And it sounds, I obviously when we think about CBD, I think immediately of like relaxation, chilling, using it to sleep. So it's really activating the healing state of your body, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's bringing to balance. So whatever might be missing the mark, it's kind of like gently going over and nudging it, like, hey,
Yeah, yeah,
It's your turn to show up and like regulate the hormones or, to regulate the temperature.
yeah. How are you using it in the office then, with the combination of chiropractic and healing arts with with CBD? Is this something that every one of your clients you're recommending to use, or how are you using it together? Because obviously it sounds like CBD is like the panacea for everything, and it may well be. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that in terms of using it with other healing arts.
Yeah, I think it can be that, and so can chiropractic.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a similar way, like you're saying, it's adding this small force into the body and allowing it to adapt readily as it's designed perfectly to do. So in our office, I don't recommend it to everybody. It's here, like you can see it right here behind me on this little shelf. So it's available, and some people are intrigued by it and curious about it. And then there are a handful of people that I do recommend it to. If they are kind of at a wall in their healing, whether it's like an acute pain or something that they came in for that they're maybe not reaching with the adjustments, like they're not getting better, then I think let's try to add in some CBD and see if that might help regulate something else that's like a different chemical stressor that's coming in, and help get you over the hump of uh, beginning the healing process in that area. Or if people are experiencing anxiety or depressive symptoms, and the chiropractic is maybe not, like they're still seeking something else, then I would absolutely recommend to them, try this out. And but for the most part, I don't really sell it a lot yet. I just kind of, it's here and it's like available as an option.
Yeah.
And I think that when people are taking the steps for their health to commit to something like a chiropractic care plan and say, this is going to help me on the other side reach XYZ goals that I have for myself, whether it be out of pain or walking a couple miles when they can't walk right now, or being able to pick up their kids or their grandkids, like that CBD is possibly a great addition to facilitate the changes. And I think, like personally, when I speak of healing journey, it is such a journey, because I've been healing different aspects of my body, mind, and soul and spirit for like about 10 years, actively, consciously pursuing that. And I know I still have a lifetime of work to do. So again, back to the like personal intention or opinion, it's like, it's up to you where that might fit in with your chiropractic or with other things that you might be adding into your regimen for taking steps forward in your health.
Absolutely. I think about just when I'm recommending care to people, and there's oftentimes I see some really chronic, complex cases that there's often a comorbid of like other types of conditions they're struggling with. And one thing I'm reminded is, or I like to say with chiropractic, and it sounds like this is similar with CBD use, is just the idea that perhaps our nervous system is so wound up that it doesn't have the intelligence, or it doesn't have the ability to even take in other things that we're trying to do to heal. And oftentimes it's just introducing some signals, some awareness to the body to actually say, this is what it's like to actually unwind, this is what it's like to relax. So then other things that we're doing in life can be so much more effective. So if we're on a special diet, I feel like maybe we're absorbing our minerals or nutrients better than otherwise not if we weren't actually receiving chiropractic, or we weren't receiving something like plant medicine of CBD. So that's what you've reminded me of when you mentioned that.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. That's a really good point.
Yeah. Something too I wonder too is I know that CBD kids use it. I know for autistic kids too, there's actually been documentation, and I know Dr. Sam in the office, he has recommended CBD to some of our autistic patients who just, it's a really great way to help them unwind. Studies have shown that there's a significant increase of calmness, there's decrease in rage or anxiety, or even just, sometimes they could be just harder, it's harder for kids to sleep. So have you used it with your kids, or how much dosage does, I'd like to tie in dosage to that as well too.
Yeah. I have. I've used it with my kids, and they love it. And like, if like a lot of times if I'm taking it, then they'll come over and be like, I want. They call it the office drops because our logo is a butterfly, and it's our Thrival logo as well as the Thrival nectar, and so it's the office drops. They are like, I want some office drops, or sometimes Luna will even ask me if I'm not taking it, like that she wants it. So, and it's not daily. It's not like she's asking me a bunch. So I know, our kids are so pure, and they know what they need. If she's asking me, then I'm like, yeah, you can have a drop. You're probably needing some facilitation in there. So just like she asks for adjustments when she's feeling like she needs some facilitation. So I do give it to them. With dosage of CBD, it's like really each bottle and label is different. So on my product, I have 750 milligrams of CBD, and that's what's contained in the entire bottle. And I use the dropper as a measurement, which isn't technically a scientific way to measure the product. So some droppers are more precise than others. So you get into this whole arena of like, there's so many variables that come into play when you're talking about dosage. But I think what's important is to know where you started from, like your baseline, and then know what your goal is, what you're trying to achieve out of it, and then slowly titrate or like add in slowly the oils to reach your desired effect. So with the kids, I just used one drop because I think that my Thrival nectar is pretty potent. It feels that way for me, and so I'd rather err on the side of like slow introduction than do too much. And if they do too much, like kids or adults, there's not really a lot of like bad side effects. You might feel too tired. Like that's one indication you took too much. If you feel groggy or tired, back off like on the dosage. And there are more, like there's other products like capsules or vaporizers, which is the least accurate in terms of milligrams per dose, even on the packaging. But there's different ways to take just CBD. And like you were saying, it's in coffee, it's in drinks. Those usually in beverages, what's listed on there is the entire thing. And what's listed on oils, for the most part, is the entire bottle or package. So then it's like kind of weird because then it's up to the consumer to know, oh, well, there's 20 servings in here, so I have to divide 750 milligrams by 20 and know that that's how much is in each dose. But then you have to measure each dose by the drops. So I think.
Hello, Carrie. Where's the sound? Huh.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there we go. Hello. You're like, I think. So you can tell me what were you saying?
Okay, yeah. Removing the complexity of some of those variables is just know what, like, to say it's Thrival nectar. Like, no, yesterday I took 2 drops and I felt like I didn't quite reach the desired effect, so tomorrow I'm going to take 3 drops.
Gotcha.
Like, use a simple measurement for yourself that you know is easy, and that's kind of how I did with the kids. Like, 1 drop is pretty good, and then maybe there's like extreme stress one day. It was just a lot. We went to a birthday party or like did something where they were totally overstimulated. Then maybe on that day I'll do 2 drops. So there's not a hard my current opinion, there's not a hard science for how to determine dosage other than your personal experience.
I feel like there's a lot that I learned in just our conversation today, and not just about CBD, but it's just a reminder that, so oftentimes we get supplements or we use CBD and we look for specific measurements, and so much of your message today is about the intuition, trusting your own intuition, trusting, being in tune with what your intention is, and mindful of whatever you decide to put in your body. I think that that's really absolutely beautiful, and just also even just honoring the intelligence of bringing something like CBD into your own body and honoring the intelligence of that too. So I really appreciate you just explaining just even dosage, like notice what you're doing, notice how your body feels, like tune inward, right? Not just follow the rules, right? So
Yeah. You're right that like we're so used to outsourcing our bodies to someone else to tell us how it works.
Yeah.
So like I think that's a huge take home message. So I'm glad you like highlighted that out of this. Is like,
yeah,
that's a really great place to start in healing in general, is
right.
you know yourself the best, and remind yourself that when someone's telling you how to handle your body, and just check in, is that really the best thing for you?
Right. Trusting it and really using something like CBD, it sounds like it's not the answer to your struggles, but perhaps it's like the facilitator to help you tune in more. So I appreciate that that teaching today. So I want to be able to, I wish we could talk more. It's already like been an hour here. I want to let our listeners know how we can find you and learn more about your CBD.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am on Instagram at Keri for Thrival, KERI, number 4, Thrival. And our website is thrivalmode.com or thrivalnectar.com. So any one of those places, awesome. You can find me.
Very cool. And I want to be able to thank our listeners for tuning in today, whether you're listening live or you're listening later after the show. I hope you found this invaluable, and definitely check out Keri's product line. I definitely really love just the own personal effects that I have felt, and just a sense of calming, and even just now, even picturing it, I could just feel it in my body. So I appreciate that Keri had shared this with me. And also, I want to be able to once again shout out to our Neuro Solution. If you want to find them out and learn more about the laser, go to neuro-solution.com. And then, of course, too, feel free to come by or reach out to Dr. Sam and myself at Wild and Precious Optimal Living. You can find us on Instagram as well, Wild Precious Optimal Living, or on Facebook at Wild Precious Optimal Living. It has been a pleasure to be able to have you on the show, Keri. So much to be able to share, and I'm so grateful to learn from you. And you're just amazing. So thank you so much, and thank you, everybody. The question I want to leave you with is, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? We will see you in 2 weeks at 10 o'clock on Friday. Take care.